Members of Green Needham, in collaboration with the League of Women Voters of Needham and Mothers Out Front Needham, have been working together to urge the Needham Select Board to create a climate action plan for the town. Inspired by the legislature passing the Massachusetts Climate Roadmap into law, which requires the state to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, the working group conducted preliminary research into plans developed by other towns and cities. They prepared an overview of municipal climate action plans that can be found at greenneedham.org. Needham has a history of looking for ways to use clean energy, but here's more on how a climate action plan will help the town reduce its carbon footprint.
This is something that we've talked about before. It was really kicked off by the passage of the Climate Roadmap here in Massachusetts, which took something which was an aspiration, which is to move us to a net zero economy by 2050, and it put it into statute. So now the state has to reach those goals. But to do that, towns and cities and the people and the businesses in them have to reach those goals. So with that as a spur, we felt it was a good time early this year to ask Needham to build a climate action plan. And we put together a package, understanding that the select board is the one who makes these decisions. And that's the way we work.
I don't have any reservations about the plan. It's something that's been on my priority list for this year for a while. So certainly it's natural for the board to adopt. It's clear to us that if we're going to make progress, that we need to have an organized plan. We've been working for a while and making steady progress at a variety of initiatives, but we can't tell somebody right now what's the best thing to do. And so I think having such a plan will be useful for creating a roadmap for us.
The idea is you match the climate plan to the roadmap, because the roadmap is for the entire state. So we want to set up a plan that meets those targets. One thing that was very important in this roadmap is that it isn't just about 2050. So it sets interim targets along the way. 2030, for instance. First and foremost, it will help us make our contribution, our 32,000 people here, and our contribution to the economy towards moving to net zero. Number two is there's a significant financial benefit, because many of the things we're talking about when you go to net zero will cost less. We build a school building. If we don't spend $100,000 a year on buying natural gas, that's 2 teachers we can hire.
The real reason for having a climate action plan for Needham is so that we can prioritize the actions that the town takes, so that as we look at the dollars that we have to spend and the priorities for this, we can decide which ones have the biggest impact on our carbon footprint, the biggest potential ability for us to reduce our greenhouse gases, and help us prioritize the investments that will need to be made so that the town can move toward a carbon neutral future.
If you look at basically our world and the economy, there's 4 big sectors that we think about. There is electricity supplies, there's transportation, there's buildings, and then for convenience, I lump industry and agriculture together. The big 3 for a community like Needham are transportation, buildings, and the electricity supply. Now, electricity is something that we're very much focused on at the state level, because we want to get the electricity supply decarbonized. At the same time, we can make decisions to buy more green power. But what we're going to see in order to make this transition away from fossil fuels is transportation and buildings are going to increasingly be electrified. So that's why the electric is really important, because if we stop using fossil fuels to heat homes and we use electricity, that electricity has to be generated without fossil fuels.
I think we'll have a data-driven plan that will take a look at what we're actually using for energy resources. And from there, then we're going to need to look at how those resources get reduced or offset.
Buildings and transportation are huge sectors. Transportation is about how we get around. It's electrification of fleets and cars, but it's also about encouraging more walking, more mass transit, more biking. So that's a whole land use. Think about how we all work. And then buildings, of course, is all about how we heat and cool our buildings. And this is a really, really important piece for the town of Needham. We make decisions to build large buildings, which use a lot of energy, and they're going to be here for 30, 40, or 50 years. It's 2021. A school that we're going to build in a couple of years will be here after 2050. So we'll make the right decisions about doing that.
The challenge in creating any of these plans is everybody's got to create a plan that you can't actually fully solve with today's technology. And we're going to be relying on technology to change over the planning horizon in some ways that we are expecting it's going to change, but we will depend on that to really achieve our goals.
Another aspect that we think about is that this be an equitable plan. Needham is a fairly well-off community, but the impacts of what we do on climate are very strongly felt by less privileged communities. So we need to think about that in the things that we do. Green Needham, for example, as we move forward and do projects, thinking about what are the environmental justice and the equity aspects of this. And that's something that will be an important part of this plan.